Love it or hate it, everyone has to admit that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is one of the most significant film franchises of the 21st century. Since its inception in 2008 with Iron Man, the mega franchise has gone on to redefine the cinematic landscape and spawned several other cinematic universes that seek to replicate the same success of the MCU. However, the MCU is not perfect, and it wouldn't be fair to expect it to be. After all, it's a miracle the MCU has even succeeded in its goals, proving to critics and audiences alike that the superhero genre still has a few tricks up its sleeve. But with hindsight, it's very easy to spot some of the biggest mistakes that Marvel Studios have made along the road to Endgame. I am Kirsten from What Culture, and these are 10 mistakes that the MCU made in hindsight. Number 10, killing off all of their villains. Starting the list off with an obvious choice, but Marvel has a real issue with killing off its antagonists. Ironmonger, Yellow Jacket, Killmonger, Ultron, and now Mysterio. Not every villain has to survive, but it seems a missed opportunity to kill off so many. Returning villains are always a great treat and can allow them to develop further. Look at two of the most popular MCU characters, Loki and the Winter Soldier. They started as villain and then became anti-hero types. This is great, but it would be fun to explore the other side too. What if Iron Man 3 saw Ironmonger, Whiplash, and Justin Hammer team up against Iron Man? What if Ultron could return in a weakened form and the only person who could stop him was Hank Pym? So many opportunities are lost when you take the easy option and just kill off your villain. We can still hold out hope that one day we'll get Dark Avengers or Masters of Evil, but the MCU just doesn't have the villain roster to support either of those teams at the moment. Number 9, Ultron. This is another easy choice, but it's no secret that the Avengers Age of Ultron is the least popular of the Avengers films. Many attribute this to the fact that the film acts as a setup for the next phase of the movies. This leads criticism of Age of Ultron to focus purely on that area of the film, leaving out Ultron. Ultron is one of Marvel's most famous villains, and if used correctly, can be a terrifying enemy for the heroes to face. You can see this in the first trailer for the film and in his debut scene, where he references Pinocchio. However, after this, Ultron becomes a quippy and unthreatening character. Marvel really dropped the ball with Ultron, and it's a shame that he never reached the heights of his comic book counterpart. Number 8, the handling of the Sokovia Accords. When it was announced that we would be seeing an adaptation of the Civil War storyline from the comics, fans were ecstatic, and for good reason. Iron Man and Captain America fighting it out was sure to be a blockbuster treat. Changes were to be expected, however, as you can't fit the Civil War storyline into just 2.5 hours. One change was the catalyst for the divide of the heroes. Instead of the Superhero Registration Act, the Sokovia Accords were introduced. This makes sense, as secret identities have never really been a focus of the MCU films, and changing the focus to collateral damage made a lot of sense. However, post-Civil War, the Sokovia Accords have had little impact. Sure, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, the Accords do play a key role. This is good. It's continuous world building that makes the MCU feel real and consistent. But were the Accords in Homecoming? Peter Parker gets to swing around New York with almost no repercussions apart from a slap on the wrist from Tony. After the events of Infinity War, it can be assumed that the Sokovia Accords are likely no longer enforced. This seems like a massive missed opportunity, as we barely saw the Accords have an effect on any of our heroes. Captain America even breaks out the arrested Avengers out of the raft before the film is even over. Perhaps the Accords will be a core element of Phase 4, but it is unlikely. Number 7, not exploring the snap/blip more. If the snap happened in real life, it is likely that society would just crumble. Losing 50% of all life would just be too much of a change to happen overnight. But this is a family-friendly superhero movie, so we were never going to see that side of the snap. Despite this, many were disappointed with the lack of an address of the snap in Endgame. The support group scene would suggest that the general public know about Thanos, but were the heroes blamed? What were the first weeks like? What happened to the established governments, and how did the Avengers help keep the world from falling apart? It would have been interesting to see a film in between Infinity War and Endgame explore these questions from either an established hero or, even better, see a new hero rise in a post-snap world. Even Far From Home could have explored the blip more. Maybe save the summer holiday story for after you've explored some unique and interesting stories about 50% of the population returning out of nowhere overnight. Instead of seeing how the blip impacted New York, for instance, we see Spider-Man travelling Europe with little mention of the ramifications of the blip. Considering that Far From Home was sold as the epilogue of the Infinity Saga, it seems odd that the blip was barely explored. Number 6, faking too many deaths. This critique of the MCU is one that was often brought up during Phase 2 as audiences began to realise that their favourite characters were never in any real danger. It wasn't until Phase 3 that the main characters actually started to kick the bucket. Loki may be the trickster god, but we've seen this character die 3 times now, but he still has a show on the way. Coulson was killed in Avengers but brought back in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury faked his own death in The Winter Soldier, and it's likely that Vision will return in some form in WandaVision. All these characters have fair enough reasons for returning that do serve the story, but it doesn't change the fact that when a character dies, unless they're a one-off villain, it is expected that they'll return. It lessens the stakes of the entire franchise as deaths become a joke amongst the fandom. There shouldn't be a quota of dead characters that needs to be reached, but it's worth remembering that a character death can be used to heighten the stakes, impact other characters, and it also allows actors to graciously step away from their roles. Yondu's death in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is a prime example of how to do a character death correctly. Number 5, Iron Man and Vision's relationship. Vision was introduced in Age of Ultron as a new body for Ultron, but with some help from Thor and Mind Stone, Jarvis was able to take control of the body. Tony Stark's AI companion that had been by his side for every adventure was now his own person, yet the relationship between Tony and Vision is never explored. The two characters share so little screen time, it's laughable. Tony and Vision only speak in Civil War one-on-one after Rhodey's accident. Tony has nothing to do with Vision in Infinity War, and now, spoilers, Tony is dead. This seems like such a missed opportunity after years of witty back and forth between the pair. Admittedly, it is hard to figure out where the two could share some screen time in current sequence of events, but even just a couple scenes spread across Age of Ultron, Civil War, and Infinity War would have been nice. I personally always find myself wondering if Tony did mourn Vision, considering that he should consider him as one of his closest allies. Number 4, releasing Black Widow in 2020. Black Widow is one of the oldest characters in the MCU and should have had a film given to her a long time ago. A Black Widow story could have fit in after Avengers, Captain America the Winter Soldier, or Civil War. While it is fantastic that the character is finally getting her own film, it is possibly just a tad bit too late. There are reasons for this behind the scenes, however it is still a mistake made by Marvel. Giving Black Widow a film, even if it is a prequel, directly after audiences have just said an emotional goodbye to her is simply bizarre. It removes the finality and impact of the death, and it seems strange to start a new phase of Marvel movies with a prequel about a character who has already died in canon. Number 3, introducing War Machine in Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 falls close to the bottom of many MCU ranking lists. For many, this is because of its overstuffed plot. Tony has to deal with his arc reactor poisoning him, Nick Fury and Black Widow, his relationship with his father, Whiplash, and Justin Hammer. Alongside this, the film sprinkles in War Machine's introduction and Tony's alcoholism. However, if Iron Man 2 chose to hold off on War Machine's debut, it's likely that it would have improved the film, and made more sense from a narrative standpoint. After Avengers, Tony is more of a team player, but also dealing with PTSD from the wormhole. Had Marvel waited to introduce War Machine, Iron Man 3 could have explored Tony's PTSD, and perhaps even his alcoholism, while he gives up on the Iron Man mantle, temporarily even, to Rhodey. This would give Iron Man 2 more breathing room and also be more comic accurate, which is always a nice touch. This also would have provided Don Cheadle a chance to really show off his acting skills and prove himself as a mainstay of the MCU. It really is a shame that the character has never truly been focused on, and I for one would love to see the story behind Boom. You looking for this? Number 2, dropping the Hulk and Black Widow relationship. One of the surprising elements of Age of Ultron was the introduction of the romance between Bruce Banner and Natasha Romanoff. While the relationship is decisive among fans, almost everyone would agree that the most annoying part of their romance was the fact that it was barely acknowledged in Infinity War or Endgame. We see in Ragnarok that Bruce is clearly still thinking about the lost romance, so why is it barely addressed? The best that we get is a throwaway joke about their reunion being awkward. There is no confrontation between the two that we get to see, no exploration of how their relationship may have been able to work with Smart Hulk, and when Natasha does choose to sacrifice herself, we only see small reactions from Bruce, like throwing a bench across a lake in anger. Nice. Had Bruce and Natasha's romance been explored further just before the time heist, her death would have been more impact. When Thanos snapped away half of all life, he saw a young Gamora. When Hulk brought everyone back, it would have been fantastic to see Bruce able to tell Natasha that they succeeded in bringing everyone home. Number 1, not caring about secret identities. The ending of Iron Man is not only an iconic moment for the MCU, but for cinema as a whole. It made perfect sense and fit the character of Tony Stark well, but this has led to almost all of the characters in the MCU having little regard for their own secret identities. Secret identities are a core aspect of the superhero archetype, and while not every superhero needs one, it's disappointing the MCU doesn't put too much focus on the area of being a superhero. Daredevil is the only MCU character to truly nail the secret identity aspect of a superhero. It provides conflict, tension, and great payoffs when characters figure it out. Compare this to the MCU film characters and the issue is clear. If any character's secret identity is a core part of their character, it's Spider-Man. Peter's secret identity has only been used as an accessory to his character, and now it would seem his secret identity and any interesting conflict that could have been explored has been erased. Moving forward, it's unlikely that the secret identities are going to be utilised, as the MCU doesn't seem to want to explore that avenue of the superhero genre. It's a shame because it really does offer a whole range of exciting ways to explore and challenge characters. And there we go, the 10 mistakes that the MCU made. In hindsight. Let us know if there's any other mistakes that you can think of in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. But for now, I have been Kirsten Ria from What Culture, and I'll see you in the next video.